Hello, welcome back to the final part of making the wormhole shader. Actually, I made a mistake in my last video to say we should delete our entire progress. Actually, we could have left some nodes. If you did delete them, just add them to follow along again. We can actually keep our color ramp node, since we will use it for our final shader, but we can disconnect it from our noise node. We can also disconnect the bottom mapping node, and duplicate it. Make sure to also connect the duplicated mapping node to our texture coordinate node, like the other mapping nodes. Then, we can add a color mix node, with which we will mix two Voronoi texture nodes together with. So we can duplicate the Voronoi node which was already there, and connect both of them to our color mix node. You can already see something happening in our viewport. Now we can connect that unconnected noise texture node with the vector of our bottom Voronoi node. Now you can see that our noise texture made the big black parts break up into much smaller parts in our viewport render. When decreasing the scale value of our noise texture node, you can see that the black parts become bigger again. Now the last texture node we will add is a Musgrave Texture node. This node will enable us to make our shader look much cooler. After adding, we can connect the fact socket of our Musgrave node to the scale socket of our top Voronoi node. Then, we can also connect the middle mapping node to our top Voronoi texture node. So vector to vector here. The bottom mapping node, you can connect to the vector of the noise texture node. This is needed since the mapping nodes will affect our texture nodes in terms of scaling, rotation and animation. The node setup that you see now is basically the entire node tree that we need. Now we just need to adjust the values and settings of our nodes to get to our final result. The first thing we change is the setting of our color mix node. We can set it to burn instead of mix. Then we can change the scale value of our bottom Voronoi node to around 16. We can also connect the fact socket of our Musgrave node to the detail socket of our noise node below. After that, we can change the value of our Musgrave scale to around 50,000. Yes, you heard that right, 50,000. I will explain later why this high value is needed. Then we can start changing some other values of the Musgrave texture node, such as detail to 16, dimension to around 40, offset and gain to 200. After changing these values you still cannot see much change. You will after we start working on our color ramp node. One other thing we need to do is to increase the scale value for the y-axis on our middle mapping node in order to stretch the texture to the length of the wormhole. A value of around 100 to start with is enough. We can always adjust this later in the final tweaking phase. Now we can start working on our super important color ramp node. The first thing we can do is to reverse the handle order with the double arrow on both side button, after which you can see an immediate change. I advise you to add and move the color ramp handles as I do. This way your shader will be as awesome as mine. Telling you at what exact location each handle should be is too tedious. So just regard me as your overlord, and follow my lead.
Please, don't listen to him, you must follow your own path in life. That is the best way.
So now you see that I have 5 handles in total. Always make sure the most left handle is black. This is needed to have those black areas. We can also start experimenting with the colors of the handles. Let's change some colors of the handles except the most left one, since this one needs to stay black. I will just quickly increase the viewport render samples to have less noise. With the color mix node, we can increase the black parts by increasing the fact value. I would say a fact value of 0.6 seems good. Since the streaks of our wormhole are too small for what we want, we can reduce the scale value of the bottom Untitled Texture node to increase the size of our streaks. You can also adjust the scale of the noise according to your preference. Then you can start adjusting the colors of the color ramp handles to combine the colors in such a way that your wormhole will look like something you would want to travel through. You know, to have a nice view and stuff.
Yes, I like a pretty colors. In outer space this is important.
There is not really a fixed color combination. There is no magic formula here. You should really choose the colors according to your taste. Perhaps you have bad taste, then you get bad colors. One option would be to ask a cow for her opinion, because she has a much bigger brain than yours. While adjusting the colors to your liking, you can also slide through the animation with the timeline slider, to see how it would look like on different frames. Perhaps we can increase the fact value of our color burn, to increase the amount of blackness in our wormhole. We can also play a bit with the values of our middle mapping node. For example, the location axis values, to see how the texture changes. But I think I will leave the location Y value at around 10 here. Now you can also experiment a little with the main Musgrave Texture setting. Currently it's on FBM, but there are other settings as well. I also increased the location Y value of the bottom mapping node to around 20. Some different Musgrave settings does look interesting, however I will keep it on FBM. You can also increase the value of the distortion of our noise texture node. This will distort the noise. But don't increase this value too much. Otherwise your wormhole will be emotionally distorted, and galactic wormhole psychiaters don't come cheap. Here, I changed the color node setting from burn to linear light to demonstrate something. That is, that the scale of the Musgrave texture is causing the smooth pencil style fading effect. If you set the scale to 1, you'll see that the texture is rough and not very appealing. So let's slowly increase the scale value to see what happens. The more you increase it, the more refined our texture becomes. The first small flakes become so small that it just becomes like a fading effect. So we can just set this value back to 50,000. To finish up this shader, we can change the color node back from linear light to burn like it was before. You can also increase the strength of the emission if you wish. So that is it for the wormhole shader. Make sure you save first, and then experiment with the shader. See you in the next lecture, where we will create the stars.